There is a stereotype, predominantly in America, that black people cannot swim. This stereotype emerged through the 19th and 20th century and has remained a prominent assumption in modern-day Western society. I was surprised then when Barry Jenkins' 2016 film Moonlight features a scene where the protagonist Chiron is taught to swim as a boy. My first assumption was that he would drown, or almost drown, but no such event ever comes close to happening. Water is a central theme throughout the film and is often used by Chiron to connect with his inner self. However, I could not shake the haunting feeling I felt when first seeing Chiron in the sea. Reflecting upon my unease with seeing the black body in the water, I realised it was because the image of the black body with water is not shown in cinema or other media at all. Unfortunately, the stereotype that black people cannot swim is often true, particularly in urban environments. In this video essay, I will examine how such stereotypes originated, stemming from the transatlantic slave trade and continuing into segregation, and how Moonlight reclaims the image of the black body in and with water. In his article, Enslaved Swimmers and Divers in the Atlantic World, Kevin Dawson explores how swimming was a critical part of everyday life for African tribesmen before the transatlantic slave trade. African children learnt to swim at a very young age, either right after learning to walk between the ages of 10 and 14 months, or after they were weaned at approximately 2 or 3 years of age. Learning at such a young age reduces the risk of drowning in adulthood, and suggests African parents did not fear the water or the possibility of their children drowning. West Africans use variants of freestyle, enabling them to incorporate swimming into many daily activities. Such activities included setting fishing traps, meaning the ability to swim gave Africans access to a valuable food source. White Europeans, on the other hand, considered swimming to be a hopeless struggle against Mother Nature. Africans' ability to swim was seen as animalistic by Westerners, as animals instinctively knew how to swim, but it was unnatural for humans to swim without logical instruction. Many white Westerners did not learn how to swim and devalued such skills in African tribespeople. They concluded that since swimming was a naturally occurring ability in animals, the African tribesmen must be less developed, and prohibited them from swimming once they were enslaved. Slave owners saw swimming as a means of escape, and Africans were prohibited from taking part in an activity which was once integrated into their day-to-day lives. Moving into the 20th century, class and racial segregation meant Black Americans were prevented from learning to swim in public pools. Black people were discouraged from using public swimming pools, as white stereotypes of blacks as diseased and sexually threatening served as the foundation for this segregation. This stereotype justified white managers refusing Black Americans entry to pools due to a fear of disorder. They believed fights would break out if African Americans were permitted onto the premises. In 1964, pool manager James Brock went as far as to pour acid into a swimming pool after civil rights protesters jumped into a whites-only pool. The racism and segregation African Americans have faced has denied them the opportunity to learn how to swim, which has continued into modern-day society. This cause and effect of denying a generation of African Americans in the civil rights era entry to pools means they were never able to participate in recreational swimming, so it never became a part of African American culture. This meant the image of the black body in and with water dissolved completely. Barry Jenkins' 2016 film Moonlight reclaims the image of the black body in and with water, and overturns the stereotype that black people cannot swim. The film is set in Miami, Florida, and follows a gay black man Chiron from childhood to adulthood, and depicts the struggles and prejudices he faces because of his sexuality. Throughout his life, Chiron finds solace through the water, and can connect with his inner self, his true self, when he is in and near it. The film is split into 3 chapters: Little, Chiron, and Black. The title of each chapter reflects how Chiron identifies during that particular time of his life. During the first chapter, Little being Chiron's childhood nickname, Chiron is taught to swim as a boy. Jenkins uses a series of long takes to portray his first time in the water. First, Juan holds him afloat and allows Chiron's body to move naturally with the waves, demonstrating how Chiron's place is naturally with the water. In this scene, the camera is handheld, allowing it to move with the motion of the water, meaning waves lap over the camera's lens from time to time. This technique makes the spectator feel as if they are included in the scene, which emphasises the feeling that what we are observing, a black child learning to swim, is entirely natural. Classical music is played throughout the scene, and is used throughout the film to represent Chiron's inner self. Much like swimming, classical music is associated with whiteness, as classical music is a world in which black people have seldom been allowed to play a leading role. This deliberate choice made by Jenkins subverts the audience's expectations of what music would be used in a film depicting life in the hood. Music used in films set in the hood is typically hip-hop and rap, meaning classical music contrasts with the film setting, representing how Chiron feels out of place with his surroundings. The classical piece, The Middle of the World, plays uninterrupted as Chiron learns how to swim, and the dialogue is not cut from its original source, meaning the flow of the scene feels natural and puts the spectator at ease. The classical music reaffirms how Chiron feels himself while with the water, and the unmanipulated dialogue shows how he feels at ease with Juan and in the water. As the scene progresses, Chiron becomes comfortable enough to navigate the water alone. He turns away from the camera and moves out towards the open sea. The sea was seen as a means for slaves to escape by slave traders, and swimming was a way in which to achieve such an escape. Chiron independently moving out to sea represents a desire for freedom and, in particular, a freedom from assumptions about his sexuality, from his mother and bullies and the abuse he faces because of it. Jenkins detaches characters' dialogue from its original source when Chiron feels pressured or uncomfortable, creating a surreal and awkward feeling for the viewer. Most notably, this technique is used when Chiron interacts with his mother Paula, demonstrating their disconnect from each other. For example, when a teenage Chiron runs into Paula when she is high, her dialogue and movements do not match. Through this technique, Jenkins communicates Chiron's disconnect from his mother, a relationship that should be natural.
I guess you're getting grown. I can't be keeping up with you all the time. Anyway,
no music plays over the top of this exchange, signaling how Chiron cannot express his inner self when around Paula. The second scene in which water represents freedom is the scene in Part 2, Chiron, when Kevin masturbates Chiron on a beach in front of the sea. Again, the ocean represents freedom, in this case sexual freedom. Chiron can only allow himself to embrace his homosexuality when he is near the water. However, this freedom is somewhat repressed. The action takes place at night, and so under the cover of darkness, suggesting that to express their true selves, Kevin and Chiron must do it in secret. It means they are not yet fully able to accept themselves and their sexuality. This is shown in the shot when Kevin masturbates Chiron. The camera is placed behind them, so we only see their backs, with Chiron having placed his head on Kevin's shoulder. This mirrors Chiron's framing throughout the film. There are multiple tracking shots where the spectator is placed behind Chiron. We are not allowed to read his expressions or fully understand him, similarly to how he cannot understand himself. As a teenager, Chiron is bullied at school, primarily because his peers have made the assumption that he is gay. Kevin is eventually peer pressured into hitting Chiron, and Chiron is beaten until he can no longer stand. Chiron subsequently hits the bully who orchestrated the attack with a chair, resulting in Chiron being sent to juvenile hall. This sequence signifies Chiron's transformation from a teenager into the third chapter's titular, Black. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Jenkins said,
"Growing up in Miami, the ocean has this sort of, I know it has this charge, this energy, something you can always feel. Sometimes you can even smell it, despite the fact that it might be 2 miles away."
Chiron can connect to his true self when near the water, since the ocean is a central aspect of life in Miami. When Chiron is living near the ocean, he seems to be able to partially accept his sexuality, despite external factors belittling him for it. However, in the film's third chapter, Chiron moves to Atlanta, a city situated inland, meaning he moves away from the water. As Black, Chiron creates a toughened gangster exterior for himself, fulfilling a stereotype of black men in America. By moving away from the ocean, he suppresses his sexuality in order to fit into a society that continuously rejects him, and his connection to the ocean and the water fades away. At the beginning of the chapter, Chiron has been released from prison and receives a call from Kevin to visit him in Miami. He does so and they reconnect, with Kevin inviting Chiron back to his apartment. In the film's penultimate shot, Chiron places his head on Kevin's shoulder, mirroring their position when Kevin masturbated Chiron on the beach. This time, however, the spectator is permitted to see the men's facial expressions as the camera is placed in front of them. Although there is no water visibly present, the non-diegetic sound of waves can be heard. It is the first time we see an adult Chiron as vulnerable, allowing his toughened exterior down. Jenkins' alignment of this shot with the sound of waves shows that by returning to Miami, Chiron is finally at peace with his sexuality. The film's final shot is of Little, looking out to sea, highlighting Chiron's lifelong connection to the water and ultimately uniting the image of the black body with water indefinitely. Before the camera cuts to black, Little turns and looks up out of frame. Although we as the spectator are not privy to what he is looking at, Jenkins suggests an optimism about his future that was not there before Chiron's return to Miami. The lighting is essential in this shot, as it appears to have a blue tint to it, making little skin glow blue. The film is adapted from Terrell Alvin McCrane's unpublished play In Moonlight Black Boys Look Blue. The play's title links the black body with water, since a primary connotation of blue is water and the sea. There is also a phenomenon in which the black body temporarily becomes blue in moonlight, which infers that Chiron's natural place is with the water. Cinema is a medium in which stereotypes can be challenged, undone, and changed. Moonlight's masterful use of filmmaking techniques successfully remarries the image of the black body and water. In doing so, Moonlight begins to overturn the centuries-old stereotype that black people cannot swim. The stereotype will not disappear instantly. After all, it took hundreds of years of oppression and segregation for it to form. The denial of swimming as a recreational activity allowed fear to manifest itself in black communities about the dangers of swimming. On-screen representation is a critical factor in proving it wrong, as seeing a picture of oneself on screen can help overcome such fears. Moonlight demonstrates that these fears can be overcome, that the stereotype does not always have to be the rule, and that one day, whole communities of African American people will once again look blue in moonlight.